great to have you joining us on a special holiday edition of Radio Free Georgia's In Tune to Nature program. I'm host Carrie Freeman, coming to you on Christmas Day, December 25th of 2024, from Atlanta in the Muskogee Creek Territory and former range of the Red Wolf in the foothills of the Appalachia Mountains. Today we're going to be talking about 6 Christmas songs that reference animals other than humans. These are mostly mammals who are forced to pull people around the snow in sleds. And then there's some birds, mainly birds that humans kill and eat, but sometimes birds that humans admire for their beauty. The animal-themed Christmas songs I picked were Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Run Rudolph, Sleigh Ride, Jingle Bells, The 12 Days of Christmas, and Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song. I decided to skip any of those like Alvin and the Chipmunks or Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer type songs, or any song that's a Christmas song barked out by dogs. I went with some of the American classics here. I'm going to deconstruct these Christmas songs from a critical animal studies perspective. In other words, as an animal rights activist who's sympathetic to the more than human world and the perspectives and interests of other animal individuals, I'll analyze these classic songs and what they teach us about fellow animal species, kind of like those Politically Correct Bedtime Story series that give you a critical yet humorous perspective on classic tales in Western society. My Radio Free Georgia version of this episode has the license to broadcast these popular songs, but for my podcast friends, I don't have copyright permission to play these songs, so I link to the YouTube versions of the songs in the podcast note. I'll put a Jingle Bell sound like this in there when you can cue up the songs to play yourself if you want to, but I'll repeat the key lyrics dealing with animals that I discuss. All right, let's get going. First, I have 2 songs about Santa's sleigh and a team of reindeer who pull it on Christmas to deliver gifts to human children. The first song is about animal labor, which a lot of the songs are about. It's not clear sometimes how or if these animals are compensated, but also it's about an individual mammal who was underestimated and bullied, someone different who showed how being different can be great and provide necessary skills to save the day, and those unique traits should be appreciated, not ridiculed. It also shows the individuality of wild animals, and particularly reindeer. They aren't all the same, and they're not all interchangeable. Of course, I'm describing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and we'll talk about it after we hear this version of the song performed by Burl Ives. Okay, so I like how in the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer song, they do start off by naming each individual reindeer. And so they do individualize the whole team who pull the sleigh because they've got these individual names. And then they say that they're highlighting the most famous reindeer of all, so they pick a superlative on the team who is Rudolph. And they, go on to talk about how he was bullied by his reindeers. I wouldn't call them friends, but maybe they later become friends. And then they're noticing, like, since his nose is so bright, Santa comes to say, "Won't you guide my sleigh tonight?" So there does seem to be some agency here on the part of Rudolph. His labor is voluntary, not mandated. Because I do like the fact that Santa seemed to ask Rudolph if he would, of his own will, choose to do this special task as a leader of the team to help out in a weather emergency. Of course, with the climate crisis, there are likely to be stronger storms each year, or that has proven to be the case. Or it's possible there could be warmer weather without any snow. Maybe in that case, Rudolph wouldn't be needed. It's hard to predict weather patterns anymore at Christmas because of the climate crisis. So who knows if Santa will need Rudolph's nose to light the way anymore. And honestly, really, Santa can use renewable energy to power his sleigh now if the reindeer don't choose to pull it anymore. So at the end, though, it says the reindeer love him and they're shouting out that he's going to go down in history. So this part is unusual because it acknowledges that the reindeer as a group have opinions and a collective voice, and they decided to embrace Rudolph, whom they once bullied and ostracized, and they changed their mind also about him. And they note that his heroism is making history. So the term history refers to a human practice of recording stories and retelling them orally. So it's not really something that other reindeer would do. But even though other animals don't tend to tell stories, they do, as social animal species, they do have other cultures, and they hand down those cultures and teach them to the next generation. So I will say that. Now I'm going to play another song about our hero Rudolph. Ultimately, what we learn here is that reindeer must work hard for people to make them happy and deliver gifts in a time-efficient manner at the bidding of a human male leader. Okay, but it's also a song about admiring this individual reindeer's speed and abilities because Santa and a lot of the kids are relying on him each Christmas. This song is Run, Run, Rudolph, and this is the version performed by Chuck Berry. Okay, that's just a fun song thanks to Chuck Berry. So what we find out is that Rudolph is described as a mastermind, which is usually not something that humans say about non-human animals. So we know that he's different than other reindeer, and he's not just fast, he's actually like a genius. And there's that part, though, where it says Santa's got to make it to town. Santa, make him hurry. Tell him he can take the freeway down. So this part is Santa as the human being in charge and telling Rudolph what to do and how fast he must go and what route to take. So it does kind of show us that humans know best, and ultimately we're in charge of the sleigh and the reindeers are the laborers of that. So, I mean, I suppose you could look at this as a suggestion and that maybe reindeer, like Rudolph, kind of decides what route, and this is just a recommendation. That's kind of hard to say. And then the other comments I want to make, that in terms of the superlative nature of Rudolph's abilities, he's described as whizzing like a shooting star and whizzing like a saber jet. So whether it's a machine or a natural phenomenon, they're saying Rudolph is like some kind of super magical being that has powers no one else on Earth has. Okay, so these next two songs are about sleighs being pulled by horses in snowy conditions. So, and this song I'm playing next is my favorite Christmas song for its upbeat tempo. In this song, the horse is doing all the work, but is never actually overtly acknowledged or mentioned. But the horse does neigh at the beginning, so the horse does get some voice, at least here in this Ronette's version of Sleigh Ride. That's just a super great song. I think no one can argue with that. So it starts out saying that it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with you. And presumably you means another human companion. So the horse is a utility here, and he or she is not a friend. So the song is anthropocentric in nature, like so much of our human media. And there's also a verse that says, giddy up, giddy up, giddy up, let's go, let's look at the show. And although that wasn't sung in this Ronette's version, but it kind of is about something you say when you want the horses to go faster. So it just kind of reminds us that the humans are in charge. When it's talking about how nice and cozy and comfy they are, and they're snuggled up together like two birds of a feather would be, this is showing how wonderful and comfortable it is for the humans on this sleigh ride, because they're at ease and they're comfortable. And the reason they're comfortable and they're gliding so fast is because the horse is doing all the work. Is the horse cold? Is the horse uncomfortable? Is the sleigh too heavy? We don't know these things because it's not coming from his perspective or her perspective. Another thing you could say, though, is the two birds of a feather, so referencing other animals here, they do acknowledge that birds mate for life and they love each other and they snuggle up affectionately and keep each other warm. So in this case, they're positively likening themselves as humans who are in a romantic relationship with other animals, in this case birds, who are mating up. There's also a version of this that has a verse that says, there's a happy feeling nothing in the world can buy when they pass around the coffee and the pumpkin pie. And I do like that because these are easily vegan foods, comfort foods at the holidays. And I like that the coffee and the pumpkin pie are mentioned, but there's no kind of dead birds in this. unlike in Nat King Cole's Christmas song. This next sleigh ride song is the classic Jingle Bells. I'm going with Dean Martin's version. It's slower in cadence, but I kind of find that funny. Okay, there's a lot to say about Jingle Bells here. I learned that when they talk about bells on bobtails ring, that the bobtails are the bells that people tied to the cropped tail of a horse. So it's kind of like a honking car horn or lights or something to warn other sleighs that someone is on the trail, because I guess the idea is that when you pushed the snow aside to make room to make the road, people couldn't see you coming, perhaps because the snow was piled up on either side of you. So you were supposed to have jingle bells going as kind of, a warning, so you wouldn't have a collision with another sleigh. And people also cropped the horses' tails so they wouldn't get all tangled up in the reins. And then all this happiness and laughter that they're talking about is presumably coming from the humans and not the one horse. He or she is working. So the humans are recreating and having fun, but the horse is working. I also learned that sleighing songs were apparently songs that had a certain cadence that went along with a trotting horse, and thus were fun for people to sing when they were on a sleigh ride, as if the horse's hooves were playing the percussion for the rhythm. Although in that case, you can also say that the horse is kind of participating in the song in some way. Now, that last verse that's in there is one that a lot of us don't know by heart, where it says, "Now the ground is white, go it while you're young, take the girls tonight, sing the sleighing song. Get a bobtailed nag," or sometimes it says nag or bay, bobtailed bay, 240 for his speed, and hitch him to an open sleigh, and crack, you'll take the lead. Now, this acknowledges the human ownership and control over the horse in this one-horse open sleigh, because they have to be hitched to pull the sleigh for humans who take the lead by cracking the whip. But it actually, that's what I perceive it to be, but in reading a little bit more, and I don't know how historically accurate these little Google searches of mine are, but another version says it might have meant that teenagers were having drag races with horses in Massachusetts back in the day, and so the horse took the lead in the race. And the whole thing was them kind of goofing off and kind of recreating. And so that's kind of a better meaning when you're saying you'll take the lead. In this case, the horse is taking the lead and not necessarily the humans taking the lead over the horse. But the notion of crack, you'll take the lead, kind of it seems like a crack of the whip. I also learned that 240 for his speed, I had never heard that term before, seems to indicate that you would get a horse that could go 1 mile in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So that was making good time. So a horse that's fast, basically. And some version of the songs call this horse a bay, and others call him a nag. And apparently bay means a reddish-brown horse with a black mane and tail. And the word nag has multiple meanings, and it could mean a sturdy pony used for pulling a sleigh, which is probably what they mean here. But when you look up the term nag, you see all these derogatory references to an old horse that's described as in poor condition and worthless or useless. And we do think of a nag as a pejorative term, a negative term. So it does sound kind of sad, but probably that doesn't fit with this song because they're valuing a fast horse. I will say the fact that they use the pronoun he to describe the horse, who is dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, instead of it, does indicate some notion of who the horse is, and that he is not being referred to as an inanimate object like it. Because we often hear in society us referring to non-human animals as it. And that's still the way with the journalism industry with the Associated Press Style Guide, even though my friend Deb Merskin and I, with our animalsandmedia.org guidelines, have tried to work with the group In Defense of Animals to get the Associated Press to update their style guidelines. So when a non-human animal's sex is unknown, the journalists refer to the animal as he or she or they, but don't use the term it, because that doesn't even make sense in describing an individual. Now, these last two songs are more agricultural in nature. They're food oriented, related to birds. And in this old European song I'm going to play next, almost all the gifts are actual animals, mostly birds, wild and domesticated, presumably for killing and eating, but sometimes they're admiring their beauty. And of course, I'm talking about the classic song and poem, The 12 Days of Christmas. It's very repetitive, as you know, so I'm just playing the last verse that goes through all the gifts. And this one is performed by Bing Crosby and the Andrew Sisters. As a reminder, I'm just inserting the bell sound instead of the actual songs for copyright reasons. Okay, The 12 Days of Christmas is obviously some kind of rather fantastical song or kind of dreamy, almost poetic or silly type song that we don't really take seriously, because I think a lot of times it really doesn't make sense for us. I mean, who's going to give, I don't know, 10 Lords a Leaping? I would pay someone to avoid that. So I don't even know why we would really want a lot of these things. Anyway, but let's just take it from kind of the end, working our way back to that partridge. But 8 maids a milking. This is the only time they're mentioning cows. So it's an agricultural reference here that's insinuating that young unmarried women, like the farmers' daughters, are doing the chores, like milking the cows. And the cows are females being bred and milked for profit or food. And this is all happening against their will or without their consent. And in today's society, with the industry, the agricultural industry, they separate calves from their mothers so that the baby's milk can be taken for the humans from the mother cow. And that causes a lot of suffering for the mothers and babies to be separated, and there's a lot of crying. And then the female cows end up suffering the same exploitation as their mothers, because then they're just raised to be constantly re-impregnated and have their babies taken and the baby's milk taken, and then the whole cycle of exploitation continues. And for the male babies, they're often killed as babies as well in the food that we refer to as veal. So the dairy industry, while it seems so benign and they try to market it as so wholesome, it's really one of the saddest of industries. And if you're looking to give up an animal food for humane reasons, dairy is a good one. On a more positive note, the 7 swans of swimming, because they're swimming, it's not insinuating that they're food. So it just seems like they're a luxury gift of sorts for beauty, like adorning a pond or something like that. Now, the 6 geese a laying indicates that these geese are agricultural and we're trying to control them and make sure they continue to have eggs so we could eat or sell the eggs. For calling birds, there's different historical references to what this really might mean, but it's probably a songbird, or that's the way we today in the United States would hear this song, because we like to hear songbirds sing and we admire them for it. 3 French hens, because they're hens, I think they're referring to fancy hens that may have been used for show, but they probably are used for food or maybe egg laying, because they're focusing on the fact that they're female by calling them hens. 2 turtle doves. Now these are a small kind of dark pigeon, and they were eaten by the wealthy. But because they're in a pair, you could also control their breeding and eat their offspring, because there's 2 turtle doves. Now that I'm reading it again, 2 turtle doves doesn't indicate they're different sexes. But I think in the interpretation, there's a more positive interpretation in a non-agricultural reading of this, that they represent love, like 2 turtle doves, and like they mate for life, so that it's something that is meant to be romantic. But it could be 2 mating animals that you breed. It's kind of hard to say. I prefer the more loving reading of that. Then we end with this partridge in a pear tree that we have to hear about 12 times. I don't really know what's the deal here? Now, partridges tend to be wild birds, and so they maybe were shot and cooked more so than being bred and farmed. But why are you giving a tree with a bird in it, and can't the bird leave the tree? So, and now presumably there's pears in the tree and there's a partridge. So if it's about food, then you've got some food options there. But I'd much rather just see it as a thing of beauty, like a beautiful tree with a beautiful bird in it. Like you can have a painting or a photo of it. Let's end with just a snippet of Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song. Okay, he says everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright, but does everybody know this? Okay, most people think that, and if they eat animals, but there are a lot of vegans and vegetarians out there, or people who are just more aware of animal issues and they're trying to reduce their intake of meat. You can also ask, is it bright for the turkeys? And the answer is absolutely not. So I would like to change the lyrics to, can everybody know that some tofurkey and some mistletoe can make the season bright? It certainly makes it brighter. And for the holidays, you can always adopt a turkey or a chicken from a farm sanctuary and help sponsor their care. So it's better to save a life than take one. And you can go online and find vegan versions of pretty much anything, any recipe that you make for the holidays. You can usually veganize it or find all kinds of alternative holiday roasts usually in the frozen food section as well, if you don't really want to make it yourself. So I've been doing that for about 25 years, and me and my family have wonderful food for the holidays, and we're not intentionally killing anyone. So that's the end of our show, but I want to say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, if you celebrate any of those holidays. And this is Carrie Freeman. Thank you for listening to In Tune to Nature. I broadcast every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time online at wrfg.org and on Atlanta radio station 89.3 FM. We post action items, news, and podcasts on the show's website, facebook.com/In Tune to Nature. The views and opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of WRFG, its board, staff, or volunteers. I'm one of those volunteers, Carrie Freeman, asking you to please support independent, non-commercial media like Radio Free Georgia. Actually, it makes a great holiday gift to give people subscriptions to local media, especially local newspapers or supporting local community radio stations, like our station that hosts my In Tune to Nature show and our sister animal rights show called Second Opinion Radio that my friend Melody Paris does. And tax-deductible donations can always be given to our community radio station, Radio Free Georgia, at wrfg.org. We've been around for 50 years as your station for progressive information in Atlanta. Remember to take care of yourself and others this holiday, including other species, like those partridges, the reindeer, all those horses pulling all those sleighs. Thank you for listening. Cheers.